Hi, team, and welcome to our next screencast. Today, we're going to be talking about creating an army. How will the United States respond with enough troops in order to go off and fight not only in Europe, but also in the Pacific, right? Needing enough troops and supplies and materials to fight on two fronts. So, a peacetime draft has been approved by Congress, and this is one of the first peacetime drafts that we've actually seen approved by Congress, where we're in preparation before even the attack on Pearl Harbor, that Congress knows that it's almost inevitable that the United States will be entering into this war. So we're going to see a drastic increase, though, after the attack on Pearl Harbor. 60,000 are going to automatically enlist almost the next day in making sure that we have enough people in order to go off and fight. They enlist in the response of being attacked on December 7th of 1941. We didn't have enough supplies. We're starting to train our troops, and we have them living in tents instead of barracks. They were being trained with sticks for guns and rocks for grenades, trucks that were labeled as tanks. The troops had to take aptitude tests and physical exams and vaccines for smallpox and typhoid fever. We had them going through the ringer to make sure that they were prepared, but our home front had not caught up with the number of people who had enlisted in our army. Eventually, as we start to make those changes and we start to see the increase in production on our home front, we are going to start to see things labeled as GI. And they're labeled, and the GI stands for government issued. And this is where the term GI Joe is going to come from. If you've ever seen the action figure GI Joe or war movies where they talk about GI Joe, it comes from this time period in World War II. So again, GI stands for government issued. It was written on all of their uniforms and things that were handed out to them, their war materials. So that's where GI Joe comes from. African Americans, again, are going to enlist. They'll eventually also be drafted. And like World War I, they look at this as an opportunity. Can they make change not only for the United States in helping and fighting to preserve our independence and our safety, but can they make those changes for themselves as well? We have what's going to be called the Double V campaign. It's about double victory. A victory overseas in Europe against the racism of Hitler and our other enemies, while also fighting against the racism that we're experiencing at home, hoping that when they come home after World War II, it will be different, unlike when they came home in World War I or after World War I. So we're going to see and look into groups like the Tuskegee Airmen, who are a flight squadron. We're going to investigate that group a little bit together. Some of the other minority groups that were allowed in non-combat positions were Mexicans were fighting in the Coast Guard, the Japanese eventually after we kind of gained some trust again after Pearl Harbor, will become a part of the army in the second generation and could prove allegiance to the United States by enlisting. And then we saw Native Americans as great warriors and allowed them to fight in the army as well. We're conservative about who we're having fight with us, but we also need every person possible if we want to defeat all of our enemies on those two fronts. So eventually we will have the Selective Service Act again, which is going to be allowing the draft to happen. So we'll talk a little bit about how people are going to be, how they're going to be drafted in a little bit. All right, have a great night.